Cutter top 10, Cutter top 10. You know you liked it a lot. Time to see who is the best and the worst at stuff. You know, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, NASCAR, wrestling. If I have to, so please join me. Why don't you read? This is Cutter's top 10. Hey there, Heather, ho there! It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. We're ready to rumble! Oh! Hey there, Heather, ho there! It's Jeff Cutter Diamond with another top 10, and this time it's the top 10 what-ifs in NHL history. Here we go. And we actually had some honorable mentions because there were some very good what-if scenarios that we don't... Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Alright, so here are the controversies. Honorable mention goes to Martin Jelena, 2004. We all, as I said in one of my previous videos, that Martin Jelena took a shot that apparently went over the line at the last second. But the only readily available video replay said that the puck had crossed the line. In fantasy, this is a good goal, and Calgary wins their second Stanley Cup. However, this animation from 2004 shows that the call is not conclusive and there's controversy. But anyway, the 2004 Stanley Cup is shrouded in more controversy. Okay, another what if. What if the Flames never traded Brett Hull? Honorable mention. Brett Hull scored 27 goals with Calgary. Hull couldn't catch couldn't catch a cold in Calgary, and then Calgary traded Brett Hull for peanuts, which included Rick Romsley. The Flames went on to win the Cup in '89, but their last Cup with the court and never got over the hump in the '90s. In fantasy, the Flames keep Hull, and they actually wreak havoc. Brett Hull's Flames continue the dominance of Alberta because he's there. And in Fantasyland, Talbot Burry wasn't the guy who sunk the Flames in Game 7 in the quarterfinals. It was Brett Hull who sunk the Canucks, and the Flames go on to the Stanley Cup final to face the Rangers and probably lose in '94. Another honorable mention. What if the merger between the NHL and WHA never happened? Of course, the WHA was super aggressive and managed to get Bobby Hull to join them with contract offers. And because they got Bobby Hull to sign, they could sign anybody. And that cost the NHL teams havoc trying to fill their rosters and all that. The NHL did merge them. Anyway, the fantasy says by the end of the 80s, it's the Premier League in North America. And the game's biggest stars in the WHA. Weird. Number 10. What if the Blackhawks kept Phil Esposito? Of course, we all know that Phil Esposito was traded from Chicago to Boston, and I think Espo made some comments towards Chicago management. It was a big trade. The Hawks sent Espo to Boston with Ken Hodge Sr. and Fred Stanfield for Gilles Marat, Bill Martin, and goalie Jackie Morris. The trio who went to Boston, not just Espo, would score 1,156 goals for the Bruins. The other way, Boston and Chicago, 253 goals and 3 wins from Norris. Espo was viewed as expendable because Dan McKeon and Bobby Hull had the firepower anyway. The Bruins went on to win the Cups in 70 and 72 thanks to Espo and Bobby Orr, and the Hawks didn't get a Cup till 2010. Fantasy? The presence of Espo is able to secure the Blackhawks a couple of Stanley Cups in the 1970s, and the powerful Espo brothers carried Chicago through the 70s. Number 9. What if the Habs never called up Ken Dryden in 71? It should be another what if should have been what if Steve Penny wasn't called up for that. So anyway, in 71, Rocky Vachon actually was in net for the Habs for 47 games, and Phil Meyer for 30 games. And of course, as we know, that those two goalies played major roles on other teams. Rogie for Los Angeles and Detroit, and Phil Meyer for the Atlanta Flames. Late season call-up, Ken Dryden played in 6 games, but with 165 goals against average and 6 wins out of 6, even though there was no overtime in that era. He did well. He was chosen to backstop the Habs to the Stanley Cup, won the Conn Smythe before the Calder, which is weird. He of course got the Rookie of the Year, and he went on to win 6 cups with the Habs: 71, 73, 76, 77, 78, 79, and of course he took that year off because of a contract dispute and went articling in Toronto. And Montreal had a chance to take it on Buffalo, but it failed. And he got 5,000 those too. The fantasy is that Pollock sticks with Vachon and Meyer, and the Habs would face Boston without those guys. With Vachon and Meyer, the Habs couldn't do anything. They didn't have a clear number 1. And Boston dismantles them to win the 71 Stanley Cup later on. Number 8. What if there was a season in 2005? Everyone says that. It was like, who would have won the Stanley Cup? So anyway, of course, the lockout in 2005 lasted the whole season, making sure that the Stanley Cup was awarded for the first time in 86 years. And the only time. Well, 1919 was the Spanish flu epidemic, which was a good excuse why it wasn't awarded. Everyone wants to know, who would have won the 2005 Stanley Cup? The fantasy is that the Red Wings took home the President's Trophy in both the pre-lockout and post-lockout seasons. Other great teams were the Sharks, the Avalanche, the Stars, the Bruins, the Senators, Flyers, maybe the Leafs. Who knows? One of those teams would have found their name on Lord Stanley. And what about the Sidney Crosby sweepstakes? Well, Pittsburgh would have still had a shot, but, they might not have had him. So in conclusion, maybe the Red Wings would have won the Stanley Cup in 2005. And Sidney Crosby could have been wearing a different jersey. Number 7. What if Gretzky was called for the high stick on Gilmore by Kerry Fraser in 93? It was very painful. The Leafs were getting close to winning in Los Angeles at the Western Forum to win a chance to go to the Stanley Cup against Montreal, because Montreal finished up their series a few days earlier. So anyway, it would have been Habs Leafs in the 93 Cup final. In overtime, Gretzky clipped Gilmore with a high stick. Fraser missed the infraction, and instead of a 2-minute or even a double biter because it drew blood, Gretzky scored the winner late in overtime and got to Game 7 in Toronto, which he scored his famous hat trick against the Leafs at Maple Leaf Gardens. Fraser makes the call, and the Leafs capitalize on the power play and go to the Stanley Cup Finals. And the Leafs, even though they would lose to the Habs in the final, at least their finals drought would be only 22 years and not nearly 50. Number 6. What if Eric Lindros actually put on the Nordiques sweater, wanted to stay in Quebec? He was called the next one. He had a lot of expectations on his shoulders while playing for Oshawa. And, of course, if I know more about Eric Lindros, I would be really pissed off at him for the 1990 Memorial Cup beating Kitchener in the final. But because I was only 5 years old, I would not have known. So anyway, Quebec called out his name because Quebec just stunk in 91. He refused to don the sweater. It was kind of also because of his agent and his parents. Eric had kind of meddling parents. His father, Carl, and his wife, Bonnie. Because, true to form, Eric Lindros almost was a Sault Ste. Marie Greyhound in the OHL. But because Bonnie and Clyde, or Bonnie and Carl, that's what we should call them, got mad, Oshawa ended up getting him in a trade. Sault Ste. Marie had Wayne Gretzky at one time. Bet you didn't know that. So anyway, Eric Lindros went back to Oshawa, dominated, played for the 92 Olympic team, and then Quebec had to trade his rights to Philly. Had to trade his rights because the NHL says, we need this guy pronto. So they missed the chance to make a trade with the Rangers. But anyway, they traded to the Flyers for Peter Forsberg, Steven Duchesne, Ron Hextall, Kerry Huffman, Mike Ricci, 2 first-round picks, and $15 million. Forsberg, of course, this nice, powerful center who won the Calder for the Nordiques in 95. Steve Duchesne, who was a decent offensive defenseman, kind of on the tail end of his career. Ron Hextall, surprise, surprise, that Philly would trade Ron Hextall, but he was injury prone. That was his biggest problem. Kerry Huffman really wasn't that good. Mike Ricci was decent. He was a top 5 pick in 1990. 2 first-round picks, okay, and $15 million. So the Nordiques, thanks to the pieces in the trade, won the 96 Cup. They even used their prowess in Colorado to trade for Patrick Waugh. Well, in Colorado. Fantasy Lindros gets disgruntled, but when Quebec moves to Colorado, he decides to pick it up. Meanwhile, the Flyers become a powerhouse. And Flyers Red Wings would be facing each other tooth and nail for the Stanley Cup. Mostly because they would have had Peter Forsberg, maybe Keith Duchesne and Hextall on the team. Number 5, what if the Bruins didn't get the too many men on the ice penalty against Montreal in '79? It was one of the worst regrets in Don Cherry's life. And the Zoos are not one of them. In Game 7 of the Stanley Cup semifinal, the Bruins were up by a goal with 2 minutes left to play, and then there was a too many man penalty. I heard from Liam McGuire himself that Stan Jonathan was the guy who was costing the team who cost the team the penalty. Guy Lafleur tied the game on the power play with less than a minute left, and then thanks to Yvonne Lambert in overtime around 11-minute mark, Montreal won the game, the series, and the Stanley Cup, and Don Cherry doesn't get fired right off the bat and go to Colorado. So anyway, Fantasyland, the Bruins stunned the form, and then the Bruins would take down the Rangers, the upstart Rangers, who of course took down the Islanders in their, I think, the conference quarters or semis. I think it was the semis, I can't remember. But anyway, the Bruins would have won the '79 Stanley Cup. And with the Boston bench not making that gaffe, Bruins fans would not have to deal with a 39-year drought. And Don Cherry becomes more unbearable on CBC, never shutting up about toppling Goliath in '79. That's for sure. I guess he would have still been on CBC. Number 4, what if Steve Smith didn't score in his own net? I kind of covered that in the past few lists. At Steve Smith, it was 2-2. Steve Smith picked up the puck behind his own net and decided to do a cross-ice pass, but he hits Grant Fuhrer in the leg, and the Flames went on to win the game 3-2. Flames won the conference championship against St. Louis. They would go to the final, but Montreal took them out in 5, and Patrick Roy is a freaking hero. Fantasy-wise, Steve Smith makes a clean pass, and the game goes to overtime when Yari Curry scored from Gretzky. While Patrick Roy has a good, sensational playoff, the Flames were a better matchup for Montreal than Edmonton. Unfortunately, in the final, Edmonton would take down St. Louis in the conference finals, and then would face Edmonton in Montreal in the final, and then of course would make it 5 straight titles. Number 3, what if the Habs actually kept Roy and fired Tremblay, or in layman's terms, what if Mario Tremblay wasn't so smug about leaving Patrick Roy in for too many goals? When Montreal hired Mario Tremblay to replace Jacques Demers, there was trouble. Roy and Tremblay had a bad relationship, had a few public spats, and Jacques Demers gave Patrick Roy a little more freedom, leeway if you will, than any other coach. Of course, Roy and Tremblay had a problem because Tremblay made some comments about the Toronto Maple Leafs in his broken English, and of course Tremblay got mad at Roy for laughing. So anyway, Roy was pulled after being shelled for 9 goals in the most humiliating home loss ever, and that was in the last season of the form. 11-1 to the Red Wings, December 2nd, 1985. I was watching the Leaf game, and I can't remember if it was the Blackhawks or the Blues. The Leafs were playing at that time, but I was over at one of Grandma's friends had the Leaf game on TV, so me and my grandma went down to watch it. Well, it was the Santa Claus parade, too, in Bright. So anyway, less than a week later, Roy was traded to Colorado for Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Truszewski, and Andre Kovalenko because Patrick Roy got very angry. I mean, Tremblay should not have let Roy in for 9. Maybe 5 or 6 would be decent enough. The rest is history. Roy wins 2 Stanley Cups, and Montreal makes the playoffs, loses to the Rangers after taking a 2-0 series lead, and Tremblay gets fired. Ronald Corey decides to fire Tremblay instead and get Roy to stay in Montreal. Montreal wouldn't be in the dark period, and he actually gives Montreal a Stanley Cup for some reason. His win totals don't match that of Colorado, but he stays Montreal a Hab for life. He remains an icon and was given in higher regard. And then he decides to go through the coaching ranks and become Montreal's coach in 2015. Without Roy standing in the way, wearing the Avalanche jersey. The Red Wings have no problems with the Avalanche in the late 90s, and there's no make rivalry. The Red Wings go uncontested and actually win the cup in the 90s. The Devils would win the cup in 2001 because Patrick Waugh would not be playing there. And Trombley probably would have kept his job if he had even left Patrick Waugh, give the hook to Waugh after 6 or 7 goals. Okay, number 2. What if Paul Henderson wasn't the hero for Team Canada in 72? We all know what happened. Canada stunk it up in the first 4 games of the Summit Series against the Soviets. 1 win, 2 losses, and a tie. And thanks to Phil Esposito's pep talk in Vancouver, Canada had a good reason to play. Unfortunately, they lose Game 5 in Moscow, but then won Game 6, 7, and 8. Russia would be definitely claiming victory if Game 8 ended up being a tie because of the goal differential. And thanks to Paul Henderson's goal, Canada wins 6-5. Russia becomes champion. In Fantasy of the World, they are the Summit Series champion, and it would be a big win for communism. And trouble would be assumed. And we wouldn't see like Sergei Fedorov or Pavel Bure or Alex Ovechkin in the league. Number 1, what if Gretzky was never traded? Gretzky was given to the Kings alongside Marty McSorley, who Gretzky said he wanted in the deal no matter what. And also Mike Krushnevsky went to LA for Jimmy Carson, the Teenage Phenom, Martin Shelina. Bet you didn't know Martin Shelina was a King. I thought Martin Shelina was one of the draft picks Edmonton took. When LA traded Edmonton the draft picks, I thought that was one of the guys they took. But $15 million cash and 3 first-round pickers. The trade shocked Edmonton and the rest of Canada. But what if Pocklington didn't trade the Great One thanks to his business ventures? I have seen the top 5 reasons you can't blame Wayne Gretzky and all that. But anyway, this is different. Gretzky won. Well, the Oilers won the Stanley Cup in 1990, but Gretzky would never win a Stanley Cup after Edmonton. He didn't get another chance to make it to a final. Well, actually, he did in 93, but with the Rangers, they only had 1 good season. We all agree that Edmonton wins in 89 over Los Angeles if Gretzky scored his points with the Oilers and not the Kings. And of course, in 89, the Kings come back from 3-1 series down to beat the Oilers to win that series before Calgary took them flat. The Oilers would be going to these division finals, or the conference semis, if you will, to face Calgary. Edmonton wins the series, and it actually ends up beating Montreal for the Stanley Cup in 89. And Edmonton wins a few Stanley Cups. Their dynasty grows larger, and Gretzky is more of a folklore hero. Well, he still is in Edmonton. So anyway, that's all the top 10s I've got for hockey for the time being. Stay tuned for more top 10s later on.